Now, if you spend any time building websites, you'll know there's an awful lot of repetitive tasks included in every design that you create. Anything that can speed up that workflow has to be worth experimenting with. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of those time-saving options. This is CSS classes and pseudo classes and global CSS. There's lots of different names for the various different parts of this, but the overarching thing is it just speeds up your repetitive process. So I'm going to show you how to get started. This is not going to be an expansive tutorial. It's going to be a taster. And if you want more, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll take a look at creating something more complex and comprehensive to cover more. Now, taking a look at this really simple design, you can see there's a couple of elements that are repetitive. For example, you can see we've got these buttons. We may want to style those in the same way throughout our entire design. We also have these 3 sections underneath that all need to be styled in the same way. Now, we could go in and individually style these like we would before, select the image, for example, customize the spacing and all those things, and then you could copy paste that, but it just becomes a little bit time consuming. So there's got to be an easier way, and there absolutely is. So the element that we want selected, in this example, the image, we're going to come over to the left-hand panel, and you can see at the top, we've got the unique ID name for this specific element. We're going to click inside there, and this will drop down the option now for us to create our own CSS classes. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this a name. Now, I wowould recommend getting into some kind of naming convention. For example, if you're working with images, you may want to precede everything with IMG, then a dash, then the name you want to give it. If it's a button, BTN, you kind of get the picture. So then when you're looking at your classes, it becomes considerably quicker and easier to see exactly what relates to what. So for this example, we're just going to put in IMG product, and we'll hit enter or return. We've now created our first global class. So now with that selected, you can see we have this selected. It's highlighted in the left-hand column. Underneath it shows us any or all of the CSS classes applied, because you can apply multiple classes to any individual element. That's a little bit more complex. We'll come back to that in a different video. But what we can do now is we can set up any styling that we want. So let's go ahead and start styling this particular image. Let's come in and say, for example, under the style, we want to put a bit of space underneath it. So we'll say we'll put a 20 pixel margin underneath, gives us a bit of breathing space. And if you take a look, it only affects this particular image because this is the only image that has that class applied to it. But bear with me because I'm going to show you something pretty cool in a second. Once we've done that, we'll come over and we'll just come down into our border and box. We'll pop in a little bit of border. We'll link these together and we'll just round these edges off by setting an 8 pixel edge on them. So now we've styled this in an individual way. So you can see only this image is being affected. But let's go ahead and select this second image. Let's come over to our classes. We're going to click inside there and you can see now we have our class image product. Let's select it and boom, all those changes are made. Let's go and select the third one, do the same thing again. So now that we've applied that class to all 3 of those, say we want to make a change. Well, making sure it's selected and we have that relevant CSS class also selected. Now if we make changes, all of those will be updated. So let's go ahead and just remove that border. And boom, all 3 images now have their corner round radius removed completely. Now you may be thinking, that's pretty cool, but it only applies to this page, but you would be wrong. Anywhere on your entire site, any template, any page, any post that references that specific unique class will have that change reflected. As long as that class is being edited, everywhere throughout your site immediately changes. So you can already see how this can make a massive change to everything you want to do when you create a design. Now that's a really cool example, but you can also do these things with like buttons and so on. So for example, let's come up to this first button, we'll select it. We'll come over, we'll give it a name. So we're going to click. Again, like I say, we'll put BTN dash, and we'll just say contact. This is going to be a contact button. So we'll again hit enter or return, global class created, and now we can style that individual button. Okay, so we've now customized the look and design of that button. And again, you see that has not affected the second button. But now if we come underneath, let's go ahead and add a button into any of these blocks. It doesn't really matter which one. We'll go ahead, we'll insert a button. And now if we select that button, come back over, click, choose our button contact, boom, you can see that now picks up the styling. But what you also notice is only picks up the styling, doesn't pick up the content inside. It literally is a styling sort of class that's being applied to it. Now, on top of creating these global CSS classes, we can also affect and create pseudo classes. Now, you may be thinking, what exactly is a pseudo class? Well, it's basic format. If you consider a button, when you hover over a button, it's a hover state. In other words, it's a pseudo class called hover. You've also got active, and there's a range of other ones you can use. And inside Bricks, even though you've only got a couple, you can create your own. But again, that's a little bit deeper than I want to go at this point in time. But let me just quickly show you how the pseudo classes are applied, and then how you can style those and how that still works and interacts with the class, the global CSS class that we've just created. So making sure that we've got our first button selected, which is our sign me up button, come out to the left hand side and you see you have this arrow. If you click on this, that'll put us into pseudo class state. Now, nothing will happen, nothing will change whatsoever until you either create or choose a pseudo class to work with. Now, to do that, you can see it says select or create a pseudo class. Click inside there, and there's the 3 pseudo classes we have as default: hover, active, and focus. Now, these are generally applied to buttons, but they can also be applied to form elements and things like that. And like I say, you can create your own custom pseudo elements or pseudo classes if you want to. So for this example, let's just choose the hover state. So what this is doing now is saying we've got the CSS class we've created, which is the btn contact. We're in the hover state pseudo class, and now we can make changes to that button. So if we come into our background, which is a really simple change, we'll select it and we'll change that to be green. Now, when we're in the pseudo class sort of mode inside Bricks, it shows us what the effect will have. In this case, the green button. So now we set the background color to that, we can go ahead and test it. Let's save this. Let's preview. And you can see there's our button. It's blue when there's not being hovered. When we go over it, it changes to blue. So there's the pseudo class, the pseudo state of that button. And like I say, you can create your own pseudo classes if you want to. It's very easy. Back inside Bricks Builder, all you need to do is click inside where it says the pseudo class, and you can pop in the name that you want. So for example, we'll just call this sample. Hit enter or return, pseudo class created. We now have our sample pseudo class created. If we want to delete it, we can simply click on the delete option. So you can very easily create your own classes, CSS classes, and so much more. But that's inside Bricks. What about if you're using something like GeneratePress and GenerateBlocks? That works in a slightly different way, but the principle is basically exactly the same. Now, having GenerateBlocks and GeneratePress Pro, you have to have the Pro version to get access to these features. What you do is you simply come into GenerateBlocks, and inside there, we've got global styles. Now, global styles is basically CSS classes. So we click on that, and you can see I've got one called buttons. If we click to open this up, you can see I've gone ahead and styled my 2 buttons for the design I'm working on. Now, it doesn't matter about the position or the spacing because these are individual CSS classes. So if I select the first button, and we come over to the right-hand side, you can see global style is set as GB-button default. The second one is GB-button-ghost. So those are created. We just style the button or whatever element you want, and then you simply come over to the global styles option, enable it, and give it a name. As simple as that. And then when we want to use those, we need to go ahead and tell it inside our GenerateBlocks design that it's a global class we want to use. Let me show you how that works. Now in this design, you can see I've got the ghost button, but we said this let's talk. It is a button, but it's not actually being styled as a button in the way that we want it to be. So all we need to do is select it, and the easiest way is come over to our list view. We can go ahead and select that. So there's our button, there's our first button. You can see it is a button. And all we need to do is come over to the top right-hand corner under the block section, and this has a checkbox that says use global styles. We'll select that, and then you can see we've got a drop down of the different global styles that we have available. If we choose ghost, you can see it picks up the ghost styling. If we choose default, it picks up the default styling, including the hover effects. Everything is in place. So it's basically exactly the same, it's just working in a slightly different way. And this is really just scratching the surface of what you can do with these global CSS classes. And if you're using a class-based design tool, like I say, like Bricks, like Breakdance, like Oxygen, like GeneratePress, like Webflow, all these tools are class-based. And it makes the whole process of designing way, way quicker and easier. And any change you make will be reflected everywhere into your entire site where you make that change from that initial global CSS class or pseudo class or whatever it is you're editing. Incredibly powerful and so much more versatile than the way you may have been working. But as always, I would welcome your feedback. Are you using CSS classes in your designs? Is this the first time you've seen them? Is this making you want to experiment and explore what they can do? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, all the applicable links are in the description below. My name's Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.